So how do we distinguish between the bad apple and the bad company? That's one thing I'd like you to speak into, but also just realizing like, we shouldn't just be jumping from place to place to place if it's not the company that's the problem, that's aligning because we're trying to get noticed or we want to get recognized. Because what I see is people continue to have those problems because they actually jump and they don't get an increase. They don't get a different title because they're still living kind of in that imposter syndrome. And so the jumping jobs is to think that they'll get appreciated at that next place. And sometimes they even take less pay.
Yeah. So I'm going to put my corporate trainer hat on here while we're talking right now and talk about, that's part of building a culture inside of a workplace. And we see that a lot is that there is one person in a team or a group that is the problem. And either that supervisor or that director hasn't really been trained to deal with them. And that effect spreads throughout that whole pod of people. And then what happens is if they're not a strong leader and they don't feel like, they don't have that courage to start the HR process and get rid of them, what happens is that person gets moved to a different department. Oh, we're going to promote the problem. And they become someone else's problem. And so, but what that does is that it kills the morale of the people that were on that team with them. Because what they see then is that my hard work and my dedication and my efforts don't matter.
Hey friends, it's Mary, and this is the Mary Jervich Show, a podcast that champions today's working women to gain the clarity, confidence, and courage to up-level your career while strengthening your faith and living your dream life, all in record time. We'll cover topics like career advancement, leadership, personal development, faith, and health and wellness, so you can intentionally create a career and life full of more abundance, joy, and love. Let's get started.
Hey friends, welcome on in to this episode of the Mary Jervich Show. I am so excited that you are joining us here today. As you know, we are bringing back our amazing guest, Chellie Phillips. She was our last guest, and she had such incredible insights on personal branding that go well beyond having colors and fonts and some of the things that so many people associate with personal branding. It's all about who you are in the workplace. And so she's going to be joining us here just shortly to continue the conversation. Now, if you are listening to this and you haven't listened to the first episode, you can surely continue on here, but you definitely want to go back and listen to that. Perhaps you even want to go over there, listen to that, and then you can fast forward and jump right over to here. Now, if you are new to the show, I just want to welcome you on in. Thank you for being here. It's always an honor and a pleasure to have the opportunity to speak with you. I also want to let you know that we have a very special new masterclass that is up now. So if you are looking to grow as a leader in the workspace and you want to know more about leadership, maybe you've heard the word, but you really don't know what's the difference between leading or managing, or if you just want to be better at communicating, connecting with people, and really influencing people. One of my mentors, John Maxwell, says, leadership is influence, nothing more and nothing less. Now, while you don't need leadership skills to rise in the ranks of your career, because let's just be honest here, I didn't know much about leading when I became an executive. But what I know, when you have leadership skills, everything becomes easier. Your work becomes more fun. Your life becomes more fun because leadership skills can be used not only in the workplace, but in every relationship you have. Yep, that's right. Whether it's with your children, with your friends, even with those hard to get along with family members. When we know the principles of leadership, our lives just become so much more enriched and we're easily able to influence people in a very positive way. And if that's something you're interested in, then I want to invite you to join in on our new masterclass. It'll only be here for a limited time and I'll be doing these live. So you can jump in and ask questions. So get registered today. Alrighty, well here she is. She is back again. Miss Chellie Phillips, you know who she is. She's our sweet, tea-sipping, sassy Southerner with a passion for helping dynamic, career-minded professionals. And she helps them to stand out in all the right ways for all of the right reasons. And she's written 2 books, ladies, 2 books. When in doubt, delete it and get noticed and get tired. And for those of you that maybe are just joining us, I just want to share with you her mission. Because Chellie is on a mission to help others tune in to what makes them great, package it properly, and use their existing skill set to find the path to their highest potential. Chellie, welcome back.
Thanks so much. I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Well, I am so happy that we have the opportunity to continue this conversation. I know when we left off last time, you had told your story about how this whole journey got started for you. And ladies, if you did not listen to that first episode, you have to go back. All I can say is Fruit Loops, right? If you want to know about Fruit Loops, then you have to go back and listen to the other episode because you don't want to miss her incredible story. But Chellie, when we left off last time, we told the listeners that you were going to tell us about the 5 tips that we want to consider when building our personal brand. Can you walk us through those?
Sure. The first thing that I want people to know about when you're building your personal brand is that you really have to develop that success mindset. Mindset really matters. And I know we kind of touched on it a little bit towards the end of the podcast where we were talking about that imposter syndrome is that, oh, I don't have the skills. I'm not good enough yet. Nobody's going to believe that I can do this. And so we got to get past that yes, you are capable. You have the ability to do these things. And the world's going to believe you have the ability to do these things when you start showcasing them in the right way. So go ahead and wrap your head around it and just go ahead and say, okay, that little voice that's going off in my head that says, no, 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 you're going to tell it to be quiet for a little bit. And so once you do that, then we're going to look into it. Let's start making this brand. And so the first thing that you really need to do is get clear on the vision. It's like, who do you want to be known for? What do you want to be known for? And the really neat thing about your personal brand is that, it encompasses all of who we are, not just our career, but, it's who you are as a person. So think about, who do I want to be known as? Do I want to be compassionate? Do I want to be kind? Do I want to be a mom? Do I want to be, I'm a great baker and a chef? What is it that you as a person want to be known for? And I call that our human skills. So we're going to showcase some of those. And then think about, what do you specialize in? And that's where we get into our occupational skills and all the things that we bring to table for our career, or even some of the things that we've picked up along the way, whether, maybe you're an amateur photographer because that's what you do as a hobby. But hey, I might not mind doing that in my career somehow. Think about the skills that you have to offer. And then, most importantly, I think the part that we need to showcase is, what do we believe in? This is where our personal values come in because, we spend, I think the number now is close to 90,000 hours of our life is what we're going to spend in the workplace. And, we want the company that we work for to stand for the same things that we believe in. We want honesty and integrity and, care about the community that we're in. And we want, employees to feel valued and appreciated. And we want people to be accountable for the roles that they have. So think about the personal values that matter to you, because you want those reflected in that personal brand for you as well. Because especially if you're starting out, when you're looking for that first company, or whether you're looking for a promotion even, you want to make sure that what you value as a person is going to show up in that company as well. So that's the first thing, is you want to get really clear on that vision.
So Chellie, with that, just a couple of things. I love what you said about all that imposter syndrome stuff. It is so true. We do not need to have that. That is from the enemy. God is with you. He is for you. He has given you skills. You do not need to try to be perfect. I know I used to think I needed to do everything right. And I think I actually adopted that because I wasn't very good at doing things. And once I started getting some things right, and I saw oh, well, that works. You can get to success and others would notice that. It kind of almost is like the success loop addiction that you can get into. But we have to be careful because the perfectionism can really creep in that stops us from taking risk that are very low risk things, right? Because we are created, and happiness actually comes when we're growing. And so if we're only staying in our comfort zone, only doing things that we know what we're doing, it becomes redundant. We can feel stuck. We can, get tired of the stuff that we're doing, but we can also feel like this is all we're capable of. And I just want you to know that you're capable for more. I believe that. And I know Chellie does too. Now, when you're talking about this vision, because there's a lot of workplaces out there, and I see it a lot. People jump from one place to the next place to the next place. And it's not just for a promotion or an advancement. We would like to think that it is, but what I see happen, and if you see it differently, I'd love for you to share that, or if you see it the same, you can share that too. But what I see is a lot of times we make these jumps because something is off in this vision, but maybe it's not the company vision. Maybe it's a boss. Maybe it's one person, or there's somebody in the company that, because what they say, one bad apple can spoil the whole bunch. And I believe that one bad person, one toxic person can destroy an entire environment. And it does not take long for it to happen. But there's bad apples. Most companies have bad apples. So how do we distinguish between the bad apple and the bad company? That's one thing I'd like you to speak into. but also just realizing like, we shouldn't just be jumping from place to place to place if it's not the company that's the problem, that's aligning because we're trying to get noticed, or we want to get recognized. Because what I see is people continue to have those problems because they actually jump and they don't get an increase. They don't get a different title because they're still living kind of in that imposter syndrome. And so the jumping jobs is to think that they'll get appreciated at that next place. And sometimes they even take less pay.
Yeah. So I'm going to put my corporate trainer hat on here while we're talking right now and talk about, that's part of building a culture inside of a workplace. And we see that a lot, is that there is one person in a team or a group that is the problem. And either that supervisor or that director hasn't really been trained to deal with them. And that effect spreads throughout that whole pot of people. And then what happens is, if they're not a strong leader and they don't feel like, they don't have that courage to start the HR process and get rid of them, what happens is that person gets moved to a different department. Oh, we're going to promote the problem, and they become someone else's problem. And so, but what that does is that it kills the morale of the people that were on that team with them. Because what they see then is that my hard work and my dedication and my efforts don't matter. I can just do the bare minimum and I can cause the most problems, and then I am the one that's going to get the reward. And so that's a real problem inside organizations, is not dealing with the problems when they occur. They can be some of the biggest culture killers inside of an organization. But on the flip side, if you go to work for a company that doesn't align with your values, that doesn't share the same belief system that you believe, or that, like when you're in the interview, you don't ask the questions that you should ask about, tell me about the day-to-day culture, tell me about the leadership styles of who I'm going to be working with, tell me about the expectations. Or, I love the one where you ask the interviewer is, tell me about your favorite day here and why. And, it's one of those things, is that's on you. And that's one of the things I work with my clients with, especially those that are seeking promotion and they feel like they have to go outside of their organization to do it, is that you have to do that initial research. Read the Glassdoor reviews, take them with a grain of salt, but read them, and then read their website and see what kind of phrasing and what kind of words they use, see what kind of values they espouse, for people to pick up on. But then do your homework in the interview. And I tell people all the time is not to forget that interview is not just for them to find out about you. It's for you to decide if this is where you want to be too. And, you have that voice and you need to use it inside that interview to ask those questions. And when you ask about what they value and what they recognize and how they hold people accountable and, the things that matter inside that organization, it's going to give you a much clearer picture of whether this is going to be someplace that I want to be and where I'm going to thrive, because they're going to be aligned with you then. If you keep moving from space to space to space, and you feel like it's the same thing happening over and over again, you might want to look inside and see, have I done that research that I need to really make that move? Am I looking for the right opportunity, or is there something that I'm not checking or I'm not doing my due diligence on that's putting me back in these situations over and over again?
Yeah. And I think part of it we have to own too, because we are the common denominator amongst many places. And so maybe we just haven't learned how to properly advocate for ourselves and ask for what we want, which goes back to the conversation we had on the last podcast, is about having that conversation about the advancement, knowing where we want our future to go, knowing what that looks like, knowing those things, having those conversations, being proactive, but not just proactive. I always like to say proactive. Okay, that's good, but it's direct, right? I want this job. Like, I want this position. What's your advice? How can we get there? Okay. All right. So that's our vision.
That's our vision. Mm-hmm. And so the next thing that we're going to do is that we have to plan for visibility. And I'm not necessarily talking about how you're going to post on social media. Well, that's a piece of it. Like you need to think about, what am I going to show the world? How am I going to show them on LinkedIn? How I'm going to make sure my Facebook matches what I'm putting out there so that everything is congruent. I shared a story with someone, I had a trainer, someone that was a personal trainer, and their Instagram page was all about fitness, all about their workouts, all this other kind of stuff. But their Facebook page was all about all the crappy food that they ate and all these parties that they had on the weekends. And they were totally misaligned. And so if you found them on Instagram, you were like, oh, perfect trader, I need to work out with them. But then if you searched them and found them on Facebook, they were like, is this the same person that's telling me how I should live healthy? And, we do that in our careers as well. And, I'm not saying that your Facebook, that every profile that you has needs to become your career profile. That's not what I'm saying at all. But you do want to make sure that everything's in alignment. If you're showing different pieces of you in different parts of your life, you want to make sure that there's nothing that is like, oh, well, on this platform, she's all about accountability, but over here, she's talking about how she respects, maybe a ball player that is slacking off and not showing up for his team this time or whatever. And so just make sure that the messages that you're putting out there on social media are in alignment. But the other thing is visibility in the workplace, that you need to take some ownership in how you show up. And, part of that is in meetings and in roles. Are you asking questions? Are you being a participant? This is going back to some of the stuff that we talked about in the other episode about setting an appointment with your boss and having a conversation. Show up as the engaged one. Show up as the one that is interested and wants to improve. And then one of the things, especially women, is like we need to think about our speech. Are we always apologizing for something? Are we saying sorry all the time? And, not that, if you make a mistake, yes, own up to it. But if someone else is late for the meeting, you don't have anything to be sorry about. Don't use words and phrases that diminish what you bring or diminish your value that you're showing there. And that's kind of hard sometimes. We get in a pattern and we get in a train of, oh, I'm just being nice. I'm being considerate. I don't want them to feel bad about something. You don't have to make them feel bad, but you also don't have to take ownership of their mistake. And then, lastly is like, think about other ways that you can become visible and show things. Can you volunteer for activities? Can you volunteer for committees? Can you use volunteer work to enhance some of your growth opportunities? Do you work for a charity and they need help increasing their visibility on social media, so you can help them create a campaign? Or maybe they need help running a fundraiser and you can help, gather corporate sponsorships or different things like that. How can you show up and increase your invisibility in ways that showcase the value that you bring to the table? So that's step number 2, is plan for that visibility.
I think that's just so important because we have to, and it's like the showing up at the meetings. And I know sometimes my clients will come to me and they'll be like, Mary, I'm at the meetings, but I don't know what to say. I don't even know if I can say anything. Should I say anything? And it's like, if they've invited you into that space and they haven't told you, sit there silently and only take notes, then yes, you absolutely can. But we have to be willing to use our voice. And we just have to, I always say, well, why is it that you're not? What's stopping you? Because a lot of times we have trouble wanting to be visible. This is a real problem. And, working with a lot of entrepreneurs as well, I coach entrepreneurs as well as women in their careers. We're the same. People are the same, men and women. And it's hard for them to be seen visibly. And so while they might have been able to post before or talk about themselves, talking about their business owners is incredibly challenging for them to be seen. And so there's usually something rooted in there. And so just asking yourself, why am I not wanting to be visible? And kind of do that 5 times, get 5 layers deep into the why you don't want to be seen. And it could be something. And then once you get there, you've got to ask yourself, is this true? And because one thing I see, Chellie, that we do is kind of like you were saying, we're told these things in childhood. We're told, it's better to be seen than heard, right? There's one. Well, perhaps that was true if you had an angry alcoholic father. Maybe it was better to be seen than heard. Maybe that was it, right? And it could be any situation. It doesn't have to be an alcoholic father. My father wasn't an alcoholic, but we're still told these messages. But the point is we take these messages that we hear as small children and all throughout our lives, and we hold them in our heart. And that's why God tells us to protect our hearts, because literally the messages are stored in our heart. And we start to believe that these things are true about us. And this is how we should actually live out our life. And so we do. But what we haven't kind of changed over is that might have been true in this situation. Maybe it is better to be seen than heard when you're sitting in a school classroom with 20 other kids and your teacher's trying to teach. But that's not true when you're sitting in that boardroom, when you're on that Zoom call, when you're sitting there with your boss one-on-one. That is a time for your voice to be heard. You can pick when and how you want to share it. You can do that strategically, but we just want to make sure there's not something planted and rooted in us that's just causing us, because we'll say, like I said before, well, that's just not who I am. Well, we can all talk. You've got a voice. And if you have a voice, you should be sharing it and using it. Your ideas are valuable. God is giving you things that he's not telling other people. He's sharing insights with you. So share them with your company because you can help them grow. Let's get visible. I love it.
So the next step is, and we touched on this a little bit, is creating that network of people around you, because your brand is only as good as far as it spreads. And so you need other people to help share this message for you. You know, on social media, it's hitting the share button and it going out, or your friends liking it, or someone seeing it. That's great. So the real world comes in when your coworkers start talking about what you're doing, when your boss begins coming to you, bringing opportunities to you because of the way that you've shown up and what you've done in the past, when other people in other departments are starting to recognize, hey, we have some opportunities, we need some collaborators to be part of this, and they're coming to you saying, hey, we think you have something to offer, would you want to be part of this multi-department team and things like that. And so being able to build that network of people that are going to help advocate for you and help spread the message of what you do is the next thing. So I really encourage people to make a list. Start small inside your own office. Start with, who are some people that I need to get on my side? And this isn't about you going, finding them, standing at their desk 5 minutes a day saying, you'll never believe what I did. This is awesome. You should hear all the stuff that I'm working on. No, this is about creating that real connection. It's about you being as interested in what's happening in their department and their lives as you want them to be is what's happening in yours. But you want to get on their radar. You want to become someone that they enjoy being around, and that they look forward to hearing what's happening, or they start to see in the newsletter, they recognize something that you're doing, and that they're willing to come to that opportunity for you. So start with your office and then build to your bigger world, so the professional world that you're around, whether that's, at conferences that you attend. I always tell my clients, if you're going to go to a conference, look at the attendee list. They usually post those ahead of time or they send them out. Find 2 or 3 people that, hey, we're in the same space and I need to connect with them. And, if they're the next step up from you, even better, because human beings love to talk about themselves. It's just the way we're made. We like to share what's going on. It goes back to that storytelling. We all want people to connect with us and everything. And so go find 15 minutes and have a coffee with them and say, hey, I want to hear about your career journey. How did you get where you are? What are some of the things that you wished you'd known when you were at my stage that's helped you move forward? And start gleaning that information and start building that network. And then that'll help you become even more clear on what it is that you need to be sharing out that says, oh, this is the things that they're looking for at the next level. Again, like we talked about earlier, is that this is how I need to start building this profile, building this brand, because your brand is your promise. It's what people can expect from you. And so what better way to find out what people expect than to sit there and network with them and ask them what their expectations for that level.
I love it, Chellie. And everything really does. Like you said before, it's like that jigsaw puzzle that fits together, because when we first started the other episode, we were talking about our personal stories and having your personal story. And when you go to the networking, having that personal story is going to be that way for people to actually remember you, because you're not just a realtor. You're not just an accountant. You're not just your job title. You are the person, and there's a story and there's a memory there, and people can remember those things. So they're going to make you memorable. Not only that, I think oftentimes, so many of us are introverted, or maybe we're kind of extroverted too. I know I'm introverted, but the truth is that we have to step out of that comfort zone. We have to get a little bit extroverted. We have to create connections. One of the keys I found is just realizing these are not transactional connections. You don't have to go into this. You can build relationships without manipulating, without expecting something else. A lot of times we've been taught that, you do A, you get B. You do C, you get D. And so whenever we think about networking and connections, if we're not careful, we take the same mentality. I'm going to do A and they're going to respond in B. I'm going to do C and they're going to respond in D. And when that response doesn't come, we then are like, did we do it wrong? Did we fail? Is this even worth doing? Because we expect something to happen very quickly, this transaction. But relationships are really built over time. And it's built through a lot of times reciprocity, and it's built through storytelling. It's built through so many things, whether it's the vulnerability, and it's different on different levels. If you have an emotional experience, if you go rock climbing with somebody, you're not probably going to forget that person because you guys are having a high adrenaline. You go skydiving, you're not going to forget them. And so that's where, you do want to have these connections, but you don't want to get tied into the transactional. So if you're feeling like unease, as she's even saying this, which I used to feel, just let that go, because creating relationships is not about manipulation. You're not just trying to create these relationships so you can manipulate them. We want to be connected to people. God has created us to be connected to people. He's created us to be in community. We thrive in community. He wants us to work together. And if you get to know more people, if you get to have more relationships, you never know, those people may not share your faith. And by creating that relationship, they may see things in you, because you can inspire people even if they're above you, and they may become interested in who God is and who Jesus is. And so you just never know what those relationships will bring. And we can just kind of let God work through the relationships if we just do some things intentionally. And I think it's how you're saying we need to show up for these relationships and be someone who's genuine and, offer to do things for others.
And one of the ways I've kind of looked at before is I look at your personal branding, and by this I'm talking about who you are and how you show up in the world, not any of not the social media aspect of it, but who you are is I look at it as a credibility bank. Like every interaction we have with somebody, we're putting a deposit in, and then what they take out of it is what they're going to walk away with it. But every interaction is putting something in, either positive or negative. And so whether it's a one-on-one interaction, whether it's, I encounter them on a Zoom later, or whatever it is like you have to look at that personal branding effort as I'm building up my value in the bank. And so we don't all get it right all the time. We're going to have failures along the way, or we're going to need some help along the way. And so what we hope is that we've got that reserve in the bank, that when we need it, based on all these other experiences, is that people have enough faith and trust that I've shown up and I have made these deposits over and over again, that they're going to overlook this one thing that didn't go right, and that they're going to still be willing to say, based on the preponderance of evidence that we have out there, this is still the right choice for us. And I'm going to pull from that bank and all this that I've been putting out there and be able to use it as my goodwill going forward, and that someone's willing to take that risk. And so, I think that's exactly kind of what you were talking about. And, it's funny, you mentioned being introvert and extrovert. I said, I do public speaking now and doing conversations like this. And I'm really, if my perfect world is let me get home in the afternoon, curl up on my couch and get a book and read, and I don't want to have a conversation with another person. And so, but I've learned over the years, how do I do this? How do I get comfortable with it? And really and truly is if you just look at it as one-on-one interactions, don't worry about, I got to meet the entire room. I'm just going to meet one person today, and I'm going to have a real conversation with them and a real connection with them. And, even when you have to do, even when I'm doing engagements, or I'm doing, some of my training and that, I still try to make those one-on-one connections, because it makes it much more real. If I can draw someone into one of the stories that I'm telling, or I can ask them to share an experience, I'm learning about them, they're learning about me. And it kind of takes the focus, and I think maybe the pressure off of being the one that has to drive the conversation. And so, and then I said it earlier, is people like to talk about themselves, and they like to be able to show up and be heard. And so it's almost like I'm giving you that opportunity to show who you are and what matters to you as well. And then you become remembered for that this person valued me and they interacted with me as well. So that goes back to adding into that credibility bank, adding that deposit in. So, I think that's a perfect way to look at it.
All right. We have a couple more left.
Yep. So the next thing is, we talked about getting the vision. We talked about the mindset. We talked about, how that you need to be visible inside the organization. The next thing that you really need to think about is, what is it that people can expect from you? Because we mentioned this earlier, that a brand is a promise. So, if I say the words Timex and Rolex, you immediately go drugstore, high-end department store, or fancy shop. But they're both watches. They both tell time. They both get us to an appointment whenever we need. So what makes one better than the other?
The perception,
The
perceived
perception.
value,
Exactly.
a little bit of the
And
material,
yeah, they're made with different things and a little bit better, but the
but the
basic job
function, yeah, the
and the
function's the
function
same.
is,
Why? It's the same
it
thing with
doesn't matter if
coffee
I
or
spend,
purses.
yeah, it doesn't matter if I spend $15 or if I spend $15,000. I can still get to my meeting on time. And so that's what you're creating, is that you're creating that experience, that expectation for someone. And so I really encourage you to pick 5 words that you want someone to say when they encounter you or they run across your brand. You're going to, every time they see that or anything that they're going to do, one of these things is going to show up, so that you're beginning to develop this list of expectations, whether it's personal or professional. It doesn't matter. It could be one of your value-based things that you care about, or it could be one of the skills that you want to showcase. It doesn't have to be all of one and none of the other. I think we're all a mix of everything, and it all needs to show up out there. And so that's the next thing, is what is it that I want to promise? And then start thinking about, how can I start showing these things? What is it that I've done, or what is it that I'm working on, or what volunteer activity am I involved in that helps me relate to this, that I can share? Just be thinking about it along the way, as that, you want things to start having alignment. And so if you have this list, that the things that I post, especially on LinkedIn and some of the other career formats, are going to highlight these 5 things consistently over and over again, these are become my brand promise, then that'll really help you get clear and really help you get, should I post this or not? This question that we have is like, should I say this? Should I say that? If you've got this list that say it's going to meet one of these criteria, then yes, I should post it. If it doesn't, is it fun and I just enjoy it? Okay, post that too. But, if you want to build that brand and you want to do that, make sure when you're posting about you and what you want the world to know, is that it follows that set of expectations, that brand promise that you have for someone.
Yeah, that's really important. And I love that 5-word thing, because that gives us something to focus on too. Okay, these are the 5 words I'm focused on. This is who I am, right? Because we're always becoming whatever it is we're focusing on. And we're just becoming the next version of that, the next best version of that. And so when we know those 5 words and we're using those 5 words, if we're saying those things about ourselves, then other people will start to repeat them. And that is exactly what you want. So it's not just that posting on social media, but it's around the office. And those are the accomplishments. Those are the things that you're bringing up. Those are the projects that you're putting yourself out there for. You don't have to burn yourself out trying to do everything. You just have to align your yes with who you are, who you want to be. What is your brand? And you don't have to do something just because you're the best, or just because you've done it before, or there are other people, they can learn, they can do it too. And even if they can't do it as good as you now, if you're going to hold on to everything, you're not going to be able to make that leap. You're not going to be able to take that next step. So train others and think about where you're going in the future, not just who you are today, but where you are. I just love that. Love it.
And then the absolute last one, I promised you 5 steps. So the last piece of this is that it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be perfectly you. In today's world, I think one of the things, authenticity is something that we all crave, is that we want to know who you really are. We want to connect with you as this person. And, trust is something I think that's been, severely eroded over the last few years, whether it's in the media, whether it's between coworkers, whether it's in our family situations, trust is just so important. And being authentic to who you are is the first big step in creating that trust. And, I don't know if we have a lot of salespeople on here or not, but, there's the old adage that before I'll buy from you, I have to know, like, and trust you. And, that's the same thing in the workplace. Before somebody really wants to be a friend with you at work, or, a colleague that you're having lunch with, they want to know, like, and trust you. And same thing with your boss. They want to know, like, and trust you, that they're going to know who you are. They're going to like being around you, and they're going to trust that you're going to show up and do the things that you're going to say. And so being authentically you and not being afraid to put that out there for the world to see is really going to help you. When we go back, we were talking about making those connections and building that network, that's going to help you attract the people that are like-minded with you, that share the same values, that honor the same things that you honor. And when you surround yourself by those people, we're only as strong as the circle of people that we surround ourselves with. And when we put those people around us that value the same things that we value, and that are pointed in the same direction that we are pointed in, and that are willing to help each other, grow and really succeed in life, then we're setting ourselves up for success. And that personal brand that we have is the starting point for all of it, is that not being afraid to put ourselves out there and show the world who we really are. And that's probably my big takeaway, is that in this world that we live in, where everything is filtered and every photo is doctored and everything else is don't worry about being perfect. We are imperfect human beings. And when we can show that vulnerability and we can show that authenticity and we can show how we overcome and we can show that I'm willing to accept you as who you are as well, then our personal brand is doing what it's out there. Is we've put that promise out there that says, this is who I'm going to be when you connect with me. This is what's going to point me in the direction that I need to go. I've got a clear vision of what I want to see and how I can help achieve it. Then, we're going to bring all those people to us that are going to do those kind of things. And not only in turn are we succeeding, is that we're going to help someone else be able to reach that they're trying to succeed to.
Wow. Chellie, my mind is this like fireworks going off right now, like so many things. I just love it all. It is all so, so good. I mean, all of the things from being authentically you, God created you. You are one of a kind. He has created you for a specific plan, a specific purpose. We do not need to worry. Like, I think sometimes we're like, well, are we qualified for this? I know even when I went from being a successful restaurant manager, running Fortune 500 companies and consulting with them, and then moving into wellness, I went in as a front office assistant believing that this is where I had to start. And God was with me. I knew it was the right place for me, but I had the wrong thinking. So thankfully, he knew how to boost me out of that and get me into the executive ranks in record time. But we have to not count ourselves out, especially if God's telling you to do something. If he's telling you to walk in something, if he's created you with something unique and he's put an opportunity before you, sometimes we can think, well, I'm not right for this opportunity. There's one woman I really respect, and she shares in her story about how she went in for this interview for VH1, and she went in and it was for this Miss Box of Junk Roll. It was all a rock and roll show. She didn't know anything about rock and roll music. She didn't even like rock and roll music. She couldn't tell you like anything about it. But here she was feeling she was supposed to interview for this position, and she got it. Not because she knew rock and roll. She actually had this unique Britney Spears impression that she did, and that made her stand out from other people. So we need to just not discount who we are, what God has given us, and not count ourselves out before somebody else tells us no. And when you were saying all of these things, when you were just kind of summarizing there, what's popping into my head was, oh, I think that's what some people would call getting lucky. Or I think that's what some people would call right place, right time. But here you are cultivating this. So we are more in control than we think. So often, I mean, God is ultimately in control. And that is the best thing ever, because your situation may not feel so good right now, but if he is in control, then it doesn't matter, because we know as long as we are obedient, we are listening, we are asking, we are praying, we are seeking, he is moving us in the direction that he wants for us. And it might not always look like we have planned in our heads and in our minds, but we can rest in his peace. We can rest in the fact that he is in control. But God does call us to make plans. And he tells us he will bless those plans and he will direct those paths in the way that he wants us to go. And so if we are faithful to make those plans, and that is creating this brand for yourself, so you are cultivating the best possible situation for you to be able to reach your goals. And I love to, Chellie, what you said, because, you really are helping others. You are helping others when you succeed in your role. You are helping others when you go to another role. There's typically people below you that want to move up. If you don't ever go anywhere, if you're there for life, then those people below you know they can't go anywhere either. And they see that. So be an inspiration. Be you. Be fully, authentically you. Come and show your best version. Don't dim your own light, right?
Absolutely. And it's funny, like, a lot of times, especially if I'm dealing with, in the first episode we talked about that I made a career change in my mid 40s. And, sometimes people think, is it too late for me to do this? Like, I can't start, like, I haven't done it before. I haven't really made an effort in it. And I love, there's an old proverb, and I'm going to screw it up, but I'll give you the gist of it. And it talks about what's the best time to plant a tree. Well, the best time to plant the tree was yesterday, but today's not a bad day for it either. And so, maybe you haven't started in the past, and maybe you really haven't thought about how I'm going to take control of that image that I have and how I'm going to showcase what my worth is so that that's what people think when they think of me. But, if you start today, you can start building that framework and that groundwork, and you can continue building on it. And, the lucky thing for you is that you've got years of resources that you can pull from. And so there's nothing to say that you can't share stories from the past. And like I said, the stories are what connect us. So like if you share something that you learned along the journey and that it helps someone else along the way, then, you're becoming that mentor. You're becoming that person that can help guide someone else along the way as well. And, I think that's the best thing is that, we all are each other's keeper. And, when we look at it that way, even the bad experiences are not so bad anymore because I can share that and I can help someone know that they're not alone in the situation and that there is a way to get past it and that you can move through it. And hey, you can even come out better and more successful on the other side sometimes. So yeah, I do think, that it is all about being intentional and all about being authentic to who you are and not worrying about getting it perfect all the time.
Wow. I love it all, Chellie. So incredible. Thank you so much for coming back for this episode. I know that you have a free gift, so why don't you tell everybody about that again, just in case they haven't gotten it yet, what it is and where they can get it.
Absolutely. So, we talked about creating that vision and getting clear on what you want to talk about. And one of the easiest ways to do that is coming up with your personal branding statement. And so I have a worksheet you can download from my website. It's chelliphillips.com/build my brand. And you can walk through a set of questions that'll help you get clear on what is your personal branding statement. And then every time you get ready to make a decision about what you're going to post or how you're going to show up at a meeting, you can refer back to that statement. It's going to be a couple sentences is all it's going to be. But when you show up and when you look at it and it becomes something that you live by, your guidepost or so that you kind of go by, then you have that to go, oh, yep, that's totally in line with what I want to do. And it becomes something that you memorize. It becomes something that you kind of live by. And it's great for those networking opportunities that we talked about too, is that you can share right off the bat, what is it that makes me who I am? And what do I care about in the future? And how do I want to continue to grow?
Amazing. Love it. Love it. So get that now. And Chellie, who would you say is the most influential woman mentor in your life?
And so that was hard because there's two that really stand out to me and for different reasons. So I'm going to share both if you've got a second and I can do that. The first is my grandmother. Fanny Pearl is her name. And I remember, there's those people in your life that that have always got your back and always support you. And they're going to show up and they're going to love you and they're going to encourage you. And, it hurts my heart sometimes to feel like people that don't have those people in their life. But my grandmother was the one, she always had a strong voice. She was not afraid to share it. And she was uniquely her. She loved to play cards. She did, went fishing all the time and, she just loved life. And that was such a great example for me to have as a young child growing up and then, on into my teenage years and everything else is to learn, she grew up in a really hard time. My grandfather was World War II vet and, early marriage times with them and everything. And talking about how they've overcome and how they've built and the strength that she had was just fascinating to me. And the older I've gotten, the more I appreciate the stories that she shared with me and those memories that I still have of her. And then the other one that I'll say that was such a huge influence on me was my 5th grade teacher. And her name was Barbara Gatto. And she was from New York and we were from South Alabama. So there was already this, oh my gosh, who is this person showing up at the school and this big personality and everything else. But she's the one that probably really inspired me to write. And, after writing 2 books and I have a 3rd one that'll be coming out in a couple of months, that, being able to find my voice and learning how to put it on paper and not being afraid to share stories. And she really connected me with the power of story and how that words matter. And so I would say those are probably the two most influential people that if I had to like narrow it down, that have got me on the path that I'm on now is both of them, fifth grade teacher and my grandmother.
I love it. Thank you for sharing that with us. They sound like very special people, and congratulations on your upcoming book. What an exciting accomplishment. So we will be celebrating you on that. Well, ladies, that's all we have for today. Thank you once again for listening to this episode of The Mary Jervich Show. If you know a woman that would benefit from hearing this message, please share it with them. And don't forget to register. For a limited time, we are offering a free live masterclass where you can learn about leadership and you can hone your leadership skills. So if you are interested in developing those skills so you can have greater impact, influence, and income in your life, then be sure to get registered today. And until we meet again, remember, you're only one plan away from your next promotion, and God, He's not done with you.
Hey friend, thank you for listening today. Be sure to join us next week for another great episode. If you receive value from today's show, I'd appreciate it if you would leave us a 5-star review to help others learn about the show. And if you're ready to fast track your career and increase your income, impact, and joy, then head on over to maryjervich.com and check out the masterclass that teaches you how you can advance too. I'd love to hear from you. You can connect with me on Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube. This and so much more can be found in the show notes. I look forward to seeing you soon.